October 27th, and the board's convening now to consider its first case set for 8:30 on our docket. It's a City of Columbus Building Department matter, and it's case number 20-0099, and it deals with the premises known as the St. Catherine of Siena Parish, located in Columbus's jurisdiction, and Columbus's adjudication order is noted on the docket. Let's have an introduction to the parties. I'd ask that the representatives for the appellant state your full name, spell your last name if you would for the court stenographer, and the capacity that you're here representing the appellant in other words, whether you're an owner, developer, architect, engineer, project manager, GC, etc. We'll do the same thing with Mr. Ghosh and Chief Sanders. We'll have an oath administered and we'll hear the case.
I will go ahead and start. This is Scott Harper, Harper, and I am the architect on the project.
Thank you very much.
My name is Keith Wagenknecht, Wagenknecht, and I'm a consultant for the owner on code and other issues.
Good morning, Keith. It's been a while.
My name is Bob Sisson. I am the facilities director for the Catholic Diocese. Last name Sisson, and I represent the owner.
And my name is William Riat, R-I-A-T, and I'm an architect, and I was basically the development manager for the project for St. Catherine's.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh. Is Ahmet there?
I will try to reach him.
I thought we had everybody here for the first hearing. Okay.
I thought we did too.
We'll go off record for just a second. Let me ask, is Chief Sanders on?
Scott Sanders present.
Great, thank you.
Ahmet is present now. Or is being admitted. Ahmet's here.
I apologize. I'm having system difficulties today. I sincerely apologize.
No, you're fine. When I logged on 10 minutes ago, it said that I had a poor connection, so I'm not. But I think we're okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ghosh. Your appearance, please.
Ahmet Ghosh, City of Columbus, Ghosh.
Okay, great. If I'd ask if all of the individuals that have appeared, if you would stand, raise your right hand. We'll do this virtually, but our court stenographer, Tammy, will administer an oath.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay, Mr. Harper or Mr. Riat, are you going to present, or Mr. Wagenknecht?
Now, Mr. Scott Harper, who's our project architect, will be the main presenter, and then you may have a little input from Keith Wagenknecht or myself or
Okay.
Bob Sisson from the diocese.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, excuse me.
Mr. Harper.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. I am the architect for the Perry Center constructed in Columbus at St. Catherine's, and our appeal request is to seek relief from the requirements listed in the adjudication order, which are OBC 1104.3 and 1104.5. The specific requirement that we are appealing is the internal pathway between the new Perry Center and the existing church. That stair from the church was built in 1953, and we connected a new atrium to the transept of the church, and the transept is exposed. The steps actually have two legs that, as you come out the door, you go down on two sides. And the total rise is about 2'9". The existing church has an elevator and an elevator lobby within 40 feet of the new entrance to the atrium. And all facilities, all buildings on the site are accessible from the site arrival points. As part of our project, the church also installed a new elevator in the school, which was not accessible previously. And the cost of that was about $350,000. So the existing elevator at the church in the exhibit that you're looking at is to the left and very close to the handicap parking. And the entrance to the new atrium is just above that. And then you can, inside of the atrium, you can see the existing stairs and steps. The elevator at the school is on the right side of the exhibit, or the north side of the exhibit, and connects all 3 levels of the school. The specific concern is that if a lift is put in on either leg of the stairway, that it would impede pedestrian flow from the church to the new atrium, or vice versa. And we're requesting relief for the 2 sections listed in the adjudication order. And I'd like to turn it over to Keith, if I could, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to talk and speak to this. If you take a look at those stairs, you'll see that the doors actually exit out into the platform area before the stairs. And for a wheelchair to get around there is going to be difficult when people are going through there. Obviously, the church has put an elevator in there to the bottom left of the building picture that you've got in front of you. So it's easy access out into the parking, as well as access to the new facility. There's no question that the interpretation by Mr. Ghosh in his office is correct. What is there does not meet code unless there is some kind of accessibility between the 2 unit buildings. However, is it really practical to put a chairlift, which is really the most economical to do it, or do we put another elevator in? And if we put another elevator in, we're talking thousands of dollars, which will be a very financial hardship to the church. What is there does not meet code unless there is some kind of accessibility between.
You faded on us, Keith.
Okay, I heard some other voices, so I wasn't sure what was going on there. So
somebody else is speaking.
Okay, where I'm coming from is that, is it really practical to put a chairlift on that stair, which would be the most financial solution to the issue? I think if we put one there, it's never going to be used. It's not practical. People are going to go down that existing elevator that's in the church and go through the accessible entryway to the new facility. I think putting in a new elevator where the other area on the diagram shows location number 2 is really going to be cost prohibitive for the church itself. We're talking a financial hardship there. So from a practical perspective, it really doesn't make sense to put any kind of lift on those stairs. Again, if you take a look at those stairs and you see that it's going to impede, if somebody is, for whatever reason, using that lift, it's going to impede the flow of traffic and pedestrians getting down those stairs. So I guess my point is, even though it's not code compliant, we've got an accessible handicap elevator at the south portion of that building, and we have an accessible entry. We have everything else. The church is going to make certain that anybody that needs to go handicap-wise from the accessible area through that elevator on the church to the other area will be easily done by somebody from the church. I just don't think, from a practical standpoint and the financial hardship that it's going to cost the church, does it make sense to put any kind of another accessible lift of some nature at that location of the stair.
And
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Riyad,
This
you
is,
want to comment?
yes, I would. Again, I'm Bill Riet. I'm a registered architect in Ohio, and I've been affiliated with this project since the very beginning. And I also go to church here every day, or not every day, every Sunday. Excuse me, I'm not that good. And what I like, this is a picture. I don't know how well this shows. This is a picture of what that stairway looks like. And it's an existing stair on both sides of the church. So people come out of the door and then they have to go around the door, and where we would be putting the chairlift would be in place of one of these sets of stairs. I go to church here every Sunday. We have a couple of handicapped people. We have this large elevator that people use all the time, and they will continue to use for a few reasons. I don't think people could navigate, if you're a handicapped person, navigating to a chairlift here would be very difficult. Getting around the door, it would also, as they've already mentioned, block all of the, a lot of the other people. And, you know, I have always been real, I try really hard to make sure we accommodate handicapped persons. And in this case, we've kind of went overboard. We actually put this big elevator in a 1935 school at the other end of this project. That was not even required, and the school just didn't have it. So we raised $350,000 to do that. This chairlift is like a $75,000 item, but more importantly, I'm convinced after going to church there every Sunday and knowing where this is, I think it'll be a danger to the people leaving. I don't think any handicapped person will use it because it will be difficult. You can go one at a time, where we have this big elevator right next door that people already use. And so we feel very strongly that this isn't necessary. And I think everybody kind of felt that. Due to COVID, we had to put it on, finish the project, and here we are, you know, and we've also been in service now for, I don't know what, 6 months or so, Scott, and or 4 or 5 months, and absolutely no issue. Everybody's happy. The big elevator that we have is right next to the handicap parking places, and that is the easiest way to get to this new addition. So it was an existing building. We all believe the code didn't even read this way to begin with. And Scott, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. I mean, basically, when we started the project, we were pretty well convinced that this was not necessary by code, and then there was a different interpretation. So we are here to appeal that there's not much else we can do, and we hope you can give us some relief on this.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, Bill. This is Scott again. In terms of the interpretation, and it was my interpretation of Chapter 34, there's a section on building entrances and scoping for alterations, and that section of the code addresses entrances, not pathways. But it did say that there was an exception for building entrances, and the point of which is, if the atrium was not connected to the church and it was literally built 10 feet away from those steps, and there was an exterior sidewalk between the two structures, we would be completely compliant and we would not have to have the pathway. And
yes, and in fact, I remember this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, by code, we could actually close off this exit way, because during construction, we had this closed off.
That's correct. If that doorway was completely closed off, this would not be an issue. It's
heavily used, but there's a lot of other exits in the church, and people use the big elevator that's right down the hall. And so you could actually lock these doors and never use it as an exit way, but we feel that would be a huge mistake, both aesthetically and for the flow of people into the new addition.
Bill, this is Keith. And
Yeah,
board,
Keith.
the reason they're saying that, that's not a required exit. They have enough exits to the church if they were to block that one off, and everything then would be code compliant. However, that is really not the right way to do this. And I believe that the City of Columbus has interpreted the code correctly based on what we have. So I don't think we're arguing that point. What we're arguing is it practical for us to really put some kind of a lift on those existing stairs? I do not believe it is. I don't think it is financially sensible to do such. I think there is enough existing accessible areas to get to the addition, and we're asking for relief on that issue. That's what the whole appeal's for. So based on what we have, if we put that chairlift there, I do believe, though, we are going to increase the safety concerns because it is going to block means of egress out of those stairs. So I don't see this
and I agree.
safety issue that
Yeah.
is the
We're
benefit.
trying- Real quick, we're trying to keep a stenographic record of this, so try not to talk over each other. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I believe this is going to be impeding the safety of the building by adding this chairlift there if there were some kind of a fire condition. So I don't see a whole lot of benefit to it. I don't see a whole lot of issues where handicap accessibility is a real concern. And aesthetically, I think it really ruins that whole existing monumental stair, as well as financially, it really doesn't make sense to do it. Bill?
Go ahead.
And last thing I guess I really want to say is I'm absolutely convinced it will not be used. If you think about a chairlift, it's complicated. They'll have to get around that doorway, one person at a time going down a chairlift, when you can stay in the church and go to the main elevator that we already have. So I'm absolutely convinced that even if we were forced to put that in, it just won't be used and is a hazard. How I feel.
This is Scott. I'd like to say just a couple of other things. And I didn't point this out earlier, but on the plan diagram that we had sent, you can see that the west main entry of the existing church is also accessible. There are multiple accessible points throughout the entire facility, and I just wanted to make a point as well.
Okay.
That's true.
Questions of either Mr. Riyad, Mr. Wagenknecht, or Mr. Harper from members of the board? Hearing none, let's hear from Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could have the floor plan back up on the screen, that would be a big help. Mr. Harper, if we could get the floor plan back on the screen.
I did put it back up, Mr.
It
Ghosh.
is there. It's there.
You may not be able to see it.
Do you see that, Mr. Ghosh?
There is a delay. There is a delay when you're watching online and attending by phone. So there you go.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I believe that the plan review, as Mr. Wagenknecht and the design team pointed out, that it is a code-specific requirement. If I recall, it's been a while since we reviewed this project and gave them plan approval. I believe the discussion was two things: that where they're showing location one, that is not probably the best place to put a platform lift. When they're talking about chair lift, they're talking about a platform lift. I believe the proposal at one point was that the platform lift goes on the face of the straight wall and goes to the landing, if I'm making sense, and the two set of stairways would be left unimpeded. The reason I can't speak in support of this appeal is that if someone's trying to go from the church to the addition or from the addition to the church, they have to go outside through the double doors towards the bottom of the drawing, and then go through an accessible entrance to get into the elevator. I at one point asked the question, could there be an awning or something for people that may need to do that? And I don't know, but I would suspect that that need probably does not arise very often. But when it does arise, and if I was in a wheelchair, I'd feel like, okay, I'm being discriminated against. I'm being told to go outside in the elements to get into an elevator to go up to the church, or vice versa, whereas everybody else can be in the interior space. That was my concern, and that's why we said you need to go before the Board of Building Appeals.
Okay, before we hear from the battalion chief, questions of members of the board and Mr. Ghosh. Chief, your thoughts?
Columbus Fire has no comment at this time, although I am in support of Mr. Ghosh's statements.
Okay, questions of the battalion chief by members of the board? Thoughts or comments by members of the board?
I have a question. This is Brad. You know, on one hand, you guys argued that you could close those stairs there, or those doors between the new parish area and the church, and that there are plenty of other ways to get through, which I don't even see other ways to get through. You know, so on the other hand, Mr. Ghosh has a good point. I was wondering that myself. Why don't you look at a ramp or something? But he said what I was thinking. Why don't they change the configuration of the whole stairway there and do, like he said, have a platform lift along the straight wall?
I'd tee that off for either Mr. Harper or Mr. Riyad or Mr. Wagon.
It's an existing stair on the old church with a large stone wall. And so it wasn't something that was designed. This is part of the old church that we butted the new project against. And the other exits are to the front of the church, to the back of the church, and where this elevator is. And if I could speak to Mr. Ghosh's thought about the outdoor, we have people that look out for our few handicapped people. And if it was raining, I'm sure they would walk with a person with an umbrella this 50 feet across to the front door. So it's an existing, you have to look at it in context. If you can see this picture that I have, I mean, this is what this stair looks like. This is a heavy concrete stair with the existing wall. So we had a historic structure that we were building against, and this just happened to be the side door of that church. But long before this, the elevator was installed for handicapped persons down the hall further to the back of the church. And it's really not that far. So yes, you have to go outside, but that's such a rare case. And, you know, we just don't have a good way to put any kind of a lift in this old church. It's extremely thick old walls. There's just no good location to do either a chairlift or the other type of lift he was talking about.
If I could also speak, this is Scott again. When we had, and Amit, it has been a while since we talked about this, but just as a point of fact, Stephen Copeland, who is the plans examiner, was accepting of the lift at location number 1 on the plan.
Any other questions, Brad?
Well, I guess he was accepting of it, but you're not. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways.
I have a question.
Partially, you know, and I know the financial hardship is something that we're not supposed to look at. And again, if for 1 minute I thought this would be a usable lift, we would figure out how to do it. I just don't believe it will be used with the big, nice elevator that we have. Secondly, for us to come up with another 75,000 to 100,000, I mean, we're so tapped out. These people put all their efforts and money into getting an elevator in an old school that made that entire 3-story school and this entire addition completely accessible, and that was not required. So everybody kind of.
So just for the record.
So it is a financial consideration is something that's within our hardship purview. Okay, I mean, because that's really what we're talking. It's twofold. It's not just the money. We don't have a good place to do this without sort of ruining the old architecture. I mean, this was a historic end wall. I don't know, I wish we had a picture of the whole end wall of the church, but this is sort of how it looked beforehand. That's what this stair looks like, and that's what we built against. So you come out of the door and you go both ways. That is what we built against on the old church. So this is, and again, from what Scott referred to, we believed we had the Title 34 behind us on, being able to have some relief because of the historic structure.
This is Keith again. Obviously, aesthetics come into play here. This being a church that's got some historic value to it, they don't want to modify the exterior of that stone and change the look to be something different than it already is. That was part of the whole design. That is why Scott, with Steve, talked about the chairlift as a possible solution, although it's really, again, not a practical solution. I think it's going to impede the traffic flow of walking down there if that stair should ever be used. And again, like Bill said, there is an accessible elevator. Granted, it does not meet the strict compliance with code, but that's why we're here to talk about it. Does it really make sense to require this when we have accessibility there? We're asking for relief for financial hardship, for aesthetic reasons, and it's practical to do so. So that's why we're asking for this relief in this area.
And last, our parish priest was going to try to be on this. I don't think he was able to navigate the Teams meeting, but all of the parishioners, and we have one or two handicapped folks that come to church, but not very regularly. And again, I sit right by them. I know where they're going to go, and they're going to use our elevator. And if it, for some reason, was raining, I guarantee you there'll be someone helping them to cross. But remember, they have to come from their car, usually in the rain. And the elevator's right next to all the handicapped parking spaces. So if you were to park there, you would be coming in the front door, or if you were coming off the elevator, you would be going to your car, which is closer and much easier. So from a handicapped person's accessibility to this space, what we have really is the best. And adding this is just a real bad financial hardship. I don't see how we're going to do it. I've been involved. I tried my darndest to figure out a way to do this. And believe me, I've worked hard on this thing. And here we have a situation where we wouldn't be here if we didn't need some help from you guys.
Could I ask you another question? During the day, the school.
Brad, let me just cut you off for 1 second. Chip,
Okay.
are you, what's your situation right now?
I still haven't gotten a call from the court, so I'm just going to plug away until.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
I'm thinking like similar private schools. During the course of the day, do the students go to the sanctuary area for different things?
Rarely. They go once a week. They go once a week to the thing. And like I said, at this point, that's why we have the handicap parking. So yes, the students do cross through this new addition and sometimes go to the church.
Well, they will be in their classrooms. They won't be outside when they go in there.
No, they won't.
No,
they'll come from the classrooms.
And I'm thinking that the parish center, I'm assuming people go to church and then they may go to the parish center afterwards or vice versa. So yes. People come in their car, they go into church, the elevator, but then they get to the parish center, then they have to go back outside and go across and go back in the building.
Correct. But
okay,
the point was this parish center wasn't even there until now. And the parish center, and the school didn't even have an elevator. So now these people, the children can come and go, and it's much easier for them. And if someone, I'm just saying that a special different lift here really makes it so difficult. We don't have, you have to see the thickness of the walls, and this is an old big church, and we don't have a good place to put it. If I could find a place to hide it and we could afford it, we would. But this is that was all out of the architecture, was to push this against the building. And I think the people in the building department were kind of okay with this at the beginning. And then we said, well, and then someone mentioned, could you put a canopy to the front door? And certainly that would be another option for us to consider. But the truth is, I just don't, for the couple of times it'll be used, I don't think that's something either, because people aren't going to let a handicapped person, but they'll be coming from their car there as well. I mean, you, at some point you do have to go to your car, which is right there by that.
This is Keith here. I guess the question is, if we're talking about the only concern is walking across from the existing elevator to the addition with having some kind of protection or a canopy, how does that really change what we're asking for? I mean, that canopy shouldn't be the issue of what we're talking about here. The issue should be, is it reasonable? Are we asking for anything that is not correct in appeals process? The appeals process, obviously, it is trying to get something that is a variance to the code, and are we asking for it that is reasonable? This is not a safety issue. This is not a life safety matter. This is not something that we're talking about that's going to be a life or death concern. What we're talking about, the only thing appears to be, is that if somebody were to go outside, they might get wet getting into the addition. Other than that, it looks to me like it's acceptable. So what's wrong with an umbrella? The church is really going to take care of their members. They're not going to let members go out there. We're talking a church here, folks. We're not talking a commercial building that anybody walks through that has no relationship to people. Church really cares about the people and their fellowship. They're not going to let their members and their guests go into the addition for functions and not take care of them.
In fact, they run out the cars now, and if it is raining, they would go get them from their car.
So if we were to put a canopy in, it's okay. Well, the canopy really doesn't make sense anyhow, because the members of the church are going to take care of their fellow members of the church. So
the canopy would go to the car. The canopy would never go to their cars either.
Right, exactly.
And so just, I guess all we're doing is appealing to you folks we think this is beyond reasonable. We're comfortable with it. We live with it. It's safe. It's so difficult and makes no sense to do this. And I think that's the spirit of what your group is supposed to look at, is whether it's reasonable and okay. And if I thought it wasn't, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I honestly, we've worked so hard on this thing. So we're just asking for your forbearance on us on this.
Mr. Chair, I do have two quick questions. First, does the church have accessible restrooms in it?
Yes,
Where are those located at on that plan that was up previously?
they're on the lower level, accessible by the elevator that's in the church.
It's the same elevator that we're talking about. So that elevator was installed so handicapped people could get outside and get into restrooms.
I understand that. So next question I have, I've heard some costs, about $350,000 for this elevator in the school. What was your total project cost for the new chapel, the new lobby addition, and the renovation for the parish center?
The total cost of the Perry Center?
The whole project.
The whole project was about $6.8 million.
Okay, so I will take a moment to opine then. I am a Catholic, and I'm on our facilities committee and on our facilities committee for our school, which is separate from our parish. So I'm involved in these issues all of the time. And this is not meant to be a negative comment at all to the work that you've done, because on the website there's a beautiful fly through. You can see everything that's going on. This is going to be a great for the parish. However, I really think in the beginning of these stages, you should have thought about the connection. that connection between the church and this new facility, which is absolutely beautiful, should have been made accessible from the beginning. It shouldn't have even been an afterthought. It shouldn't have been a code interpretation. Can we get away with it? It should have been immediately, hey, we need to make sure everybody can go from the church to this beautiful chapel and parish center that we've created for them, taken their $6.8 million of their money to build. And just because we don't like it now after the fact, because we didn't think about it ahead of time, is, I don't think, a good reason not to do something. I'm sure creatively you could have, in the whole scope of this project, come up with something beautiful, a wonderful grand ramp that attached to it and then accentuated in that lobby or something like that. So again, on this particular one, I think it should have been included in the beginning. Now that we're adding it after fact, yeah, a lift is going to look ugly on there. But I think it should have been done at the beginning, where it's not an afterthought. So I am not. I would be open to maybe granting a variance for a period of time until you guys can come up with another solution that and some additional dollars. So you don't have to do the cheapest and quickest fix. But overall, I think we need to provide that accessibility.
Paul, why don't you explain what you mean by allow them some time?
Well, I'm not sure if the certificate of occupancy is being held up by this item or not. I mean, it looks like they're well under construction, if not completed already with the project. You know, so, you know, if we said, hey, we, you know, give you, you know, 24 to 36 months variance for them to do some additional work and additional fundraising to come up with a different solution, just so that wouldn't hold up their certificate of occupancy if that was part of the issue with this item.
Understood. I thought, I just wanted you to explain it for the benefit of the parties, but other questions of either of the parties at this point in time, and I think, was that Mr. Harper or Mr. Wagenknecht wanted to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess if the board's opinion is that they would not approve this, we would very much appreciate that extended period of time to raise the funds to come up with a design solution that would be aesthetically pleasing to the church.
Okay, well, so I'm not sure where the board stands on this. I think you heard from Mr. Began, right? You heard some questions from Mr. Smith. Neil, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because I tried asking questions and I kept getting cut off. First of all, my question is, what is the issue with possibly, and I'm not an architect, possibly putting a platform lift in or around that location too, outside of the aesthetic issue?
The cost, it's a hardship in cost.
You looked into the cost of a platform lift in that location? We did.
What
was that cost?
That cost was about $75. A lot of it was related not to the lift itself, cutting into existing church transport.
So let me stop real quick, because we're trying to make a record of this. If there is someone who is dialed in and connected that's not part of this hearing, could you mute? We're getting some background information noise. Go ahead, Mr. Harper. Let's try it again.
Okay, thank you. It's the cost. The cost hardship is significant there.
I'd like to say one thing real quick. Scott, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My opinion, I'll give my opinion. You can have the floor again after that. But my opinion is I do agree with Brad and Mr. Began. I believe there should be some kind of accessibility in that area. And I don't know if I'm in favor of a long continuance, because what happens with, or a long period of time to get this remedied, because what happens in a lot of cases with that is the parties come back for a further extension. So I don't know if I'm in favor of that or not. So that's pretty much where I stand.
I would like to say something real quick. First of all, just to set the record straight, this is not something we tried to just dodge around to save money. We really believed and saw this early on and believed that it was going to be okay not to do this. And there were conversations with the building department back then. And it's not something that we take lightly. And secondly, we would appreciate some kind of a time delay if this is something you can't approve. And I would ask the question if we could have a couple of folks here come out and look at this, because I think it's hard to see from what this little Zoom call, what we're talking about here. This is a big old historic church with big thick walls, and we have a real problem doing this. So I would request if we could have someone, maybe we could do better with some videos showing you what we're trying to do, but give us some more time. If we have to find some kind of other solution, see how we could raise the money, and then come back and talk to you about it.
I'll ask Mr. Goetsch and Mr. Sanders their thoughts in light of this dialogue in a second. But Mr. Riat, what I heard you say, I heard you say one, if the board can't find its way to a variance, to accept the request, we'd like to, we'd accept some sort of extension in order to raise the money and otherwise comply or meet the board's satisfaction, or in this case, the Columbus Building Authorities. They also heard you suggest maybe that a continuance might be in order. I'm not sure what your timeline is, but to continue this hearing, we don't do like jury views. We don't go out on site. We've never done that, but and toured I don't know that necessarily we're by law prohibited from doing that, but I think historically the board has not done that. But a continuance that would allow you, if you needed to, virtually present videos or other evidence that might otherwise be compelling to the board members, that would be something I think that we could talk about. But before we go further here, real quick, Mr. Goetsch, there's been a lot of dialogue in your absence, other than just listening. Any thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll be, if the board so, thank you first of all, and if the board so decides, we'll make something work out. We can either issue temporary certificate of occupancies for 6 months, a year, or what have you, extend them if that's the decision, or we can, I'm amenable to some time frame being granted to the church, and I understand their position. I'm willing to work with them as the board decides.
Okay, Chief, your thoughts on that?
Columbus Fire has no comment. We're in support of whatever decision is made.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's circle back. I got to tell you, it looks like our fire official had to drop off for a minute due to a court call. He also has a license to practice law, and he has a law practice. So we're now to a board of 4 anyways. But we could continue this matter for a few minutes until he reappears. We could proceed as a board of 4. We could continue this hearing if the board was so inclined. Paul, Neil, Brad, what are your thoughts?
2-2.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if there's a continuance would actually make a big difference, at least for me. When we get our case files, I do, go on Google Maps or go to the websites for different projects and take a look and see. So, I think I'm pretty familiar with, you could even, on Google Maps, you could do a drive-by, and I think the Google Maps is at the point where the steel frame was up, so you could actually see through to where that was connecting to the church. So I don't know if any more time would give me any more information. I don't know about the other board members. And I would be okay with proceeding today.
How would that look? We can determine length of time here, but would that be an upholding of the adjudication order? Or how would that be worded?
I think we would do is we would grant a variance for a set period of time at which the certificate of occupancy would be revoked if not brought into compliance.
Right. Okay. Mr. Riot, Mr. Harper, you understand that mechanism if that were the route that the board were to choose?
Yes.
The variance would be an interim variance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I gather from Mr. Ghosh's comments, though maybe not we're in a perfect world here. We're not in a perfect world, but he would be amenable to that as well. Neil would like to keep the interim period of time constrained. Paul, what are your thoughts on what would you propose?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't mind a little bit more time with this. The church, thinks in terms of thousands of years. Again, I kind of threw out there, 24 or 36 months as something to look at. And again, open to, that was just a starting point. If somebody thinks it needs to be only 12 months or 18 months, that's something I could probably be swayed to.
Well, let me ask Mr. Ghosh. If we got into the 24 to 36 month era, I don't know that we will, but is that something that you would take your shoe off and bang on the table and object to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is, if it's 24 months, I'd like to give them a time-limited occupancy, and I wouldn't even charge for them. Give them a time-limited occupancy for 24 months. They show progress in 12 months. We'll give them another time-limited occupancy for another 12 months. That's my thought, initial thought.
12 months to have drawings and then 12 months to get.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if we were to come up with drawings, because I think the chairlift is one of those options that the church is not likely to go with, so they would probably put an elevator in, which would probably be far more than the 75,000. So 24 months would be great. If we had drawings and everything else done within 12 months, would that be sufficient and the construction to be completed 12 months thereafter?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to defer to the city and I'd defer to my colleagues.
Clearly, and this is Bill Riet again, clearly the time would be appreciated to try to figure out what we could do. For the people on our team, let's remember, we talk about the money to this. The church hasn't got enough money to finish paying the bills for what we already have. So we have more money to raise just to, the diocese loans money in advance. So we not only have the cost of this, and I think it's a twofold problem, but we'll work on it and try to figure it out if that's what this board expects. How do we do it and where? I mean, not only this is double thick walls going through double vestibules. Someone needs to see how this can work. And secondly, we do need enough time to do it. And then let's, I don't want to come back and say to this board, we can do something if we can't come up with the money, because it isn't just the money of the elevator. We still have money to raise to pay the bills for work that's done. So we're pretty short. So, but the time would be appreciated and very much appreciated versus just a no. Give us time to work on this further and see what we can come up with.
Brad, I see your mic. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Rios. Go ahead. Sorry. Okay, Brad.
Oh, yeah, I agree with Mr. Ghosh. 24 months seems reasonable. Let the city work with the church in solving this problem. So I would go along with that.
That's the best you're gonna do. We can work with that.
Mr. Chair?
I mean,
Yes, Neil.
Yes, I actually like Mr. Wagenknecht's idea to have the drawings finalized within a 12-month period and completion of the project in a 24-month period, or a 12-month period following that, for a total of 24 months.
Is that any different than what Mr. Ghosh stated, though? I was trying to discern that. Mr. Ghosh, is that essentially what you proposed?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Till such time they get the drawings approved, we may give them a time-limited occupancy.
Okay.
And might I ask one more quick question? Building department. There was an option. We believe that Mr. Ahmet, and I don't know about you, Mr. Ghosh, but Ahmet suggested, and I believe one of the other plans examiners thought, if this was a completely covered canopy to the front door, is that possibly one of our options? Because that's not inexpensive either, but you know, when we leave this meeting, I want to, is it been up to the building department to determine something that they think is okay for us?
I think at that point, you would need to come back before our board. I mean, we have a variance for a specific item. I think Mr. Ghosh was offering a covered area, something that he could be amenable to in support of a variance. I don't think we're necessarily going that way. I mean, I think at that point, if after, you know, you do your due diligence and, you know, you decide, hey, we would rather do it this way, then I think you could probably come back for a variance if that's the direction.
Yeah, you might come back, but at that point in time, you'd hope to be coming back with the full support of city building and city fire.
Correct. I get that. I understand that, but because I think we're going to have to work really hard on trying to figure out how this could even be done.
Be careful.
There's a lot of talent in that room, though.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, do you want to? I think that's where we're headed. Again, we don't have Chief Welch back yet, but it sounds like Brad, Neil, and Paul, the 24-month with the 12-month proviso is acceptable. And Paul, you probably need to work on some language.
Yeah. Just give me one moment here, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yeah, Tammy, let's go off the record for just a second. Let's go off for about a minute. And anybody needs to use the restroom, and we'll reconvene.
Okay.
Scott, can you hear me there?
I was muted, Bill.
Okay, I'm just saying that obviously we'll just have to meet soon after this and talk.
Yeah,
Next
that's a good idea.
All right, want to give this hopefully I got some language that captures everything, Carl.
Okay, Tammy, back on the record. Let's see what Paul has, will be proposing.
I know that would be acceptable to us because we can expect the opinion.
Okay, this variance is granted for a period of 24 months from the date of this order or until the building is brought into compliance. The building official shall issue a time-limited certificate of occupancy for the same period. The appellant shall submit revised drawings for review and approval to the building official within 12 months of the date of this order.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Harper, Mr. Rhea, Mr. Wagon. You know, again, we're not in a perfect world, and you're not going to walk out of here necessarily happy and smiling, but if we were to grant that variance on those terms for that period of time under those conditions, is that something that's acceptable, or do you have any questions that you need answered or clarification with regard to what Mr. Began just read into the record?
I think, you know, obviously you were right. We're not happy about that, but I think it's a reasonable request, and I'm hopeful to maybe get some folks out there from the building department to walk it with us and understand exactly what we have there and see what we can do. And happy to continue to try to do that. So I appreciate the time to give us to figure out another option.
Mr. Ghosh?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Only question I have, and I'm amenable to this very much. Only question I have is, if this project doesn't get done in 24 months, what's required of me with this decision?
Paul?
I would hope that we don't have to get to that point, but I think at that point, the certificate of occupancy, your time-limited certificate of occupancy expires, and they would be occupying the building without a certificate of occupancy. I mean, you could, not that you would, but you know, at that point, you could shut the building down if you wanted to.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is Keith Wagenknecht. Obviously, you can, as Mr. Began said, revoke the C of O and give an order to vacate the building. I mean, so the onus is on the owner to complete the work. I do have one question. It's not something that I'm sure the church wants to do, or we're going to do our damnedest not to do. It is a chairlift on that stair. That is an acceptable solution, is it not? If we had to go that route because of financial concerns, which I know, Bill, you don't want to do, and I know the church doesn't want to do, but it really comes down to the bottom line.
Yeah,
right.
It's not going to be
a choice.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Keith, the chairlift that you're talking about is actually a inclined platform lift. The
Yes.
ADA requirements don't really speak to like a chairlift that you would see in a residential home. It's an inclined platform lift, or you can do a vertical platform lift. Both are acceptable on the blank wall. Both are acceptable by the Chapter 11.
Okay.
So if the plans were submitted in that context, it would likely receive plan approval and could be considered code compliant? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Ghosh?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay, so it would not need any of our discretion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that'll be correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chief Sanders has taken sort of a low-key approach here thus far. What are the sentiments of City Fire with respect to the proposed variance for a limited term?
Columbus Fire would be in favor of that.
Okay. Okay. Well, anything further to come before the board for the appellant? Columbus City? Okay. I think you probably stated that already. Do you want to make a formal motion and we'll see where it goes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that I can do that. And I'm sure the appellant's team has already thought about it, but you know, I think a ramp would be a nice way to do it too. If there's a way to tuck it around the corner or get it. I mean, it's 34-foot ramp, 2 16-foot sections. I mean, there might be a way to make that work too. And that's just the architect and me throwing out something. It has really nothing to do with anything you need to
Sometimes
consider.
Sometimes our architect says, you know, I'm not here to design your building for you though, too.
But all ideas will be on the table from I get it, not chairlift, incline lift, incline platform, ramp. You know, we'll look at all these options and.
And really,
but honestly, I just want everybody to know this is not something we were trying to save money or trying to do. This is something clearly we believe we already have a good solution that people will use, and that whatever we do will not be used as much as the system we already have. So it's a lot of money for something that is not necessary, in my opinion, in this case, just to try to meet the letter of the code. In this case, I thought that's what the variance process was all about. So, but we're thrilled to have a little more time if we can't get the variance.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0099, the appellant is Catholic Diocese of Columbus for the premises St. Catherine of Siena Parish at 470 South Gold Road, Columbus, Ohio. The appellee is Amit Ghosh, building official for the City of Columbus Building Department, and adjudication order number A/O2020-012. I move to grant the variance for a period of 24 months from the date of this order or until the building is brought into compliance. The building official shall issue a time-limited certificate of occupancy for the same period, and the appellant shall submit revised drawings for review and approval to the building official within 12 months of the date of this order. And noting the, I guess the no objection to this time-limited variance by the building and fire officials.
Okay, I think that motion's been stated properly. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor on the board signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the limited term variance as stated has been granted by 4-0 vote in the absence of Chief Welch. Best of luck to the parties. Anything further to come before the board from the appellant? Hearing nothing. Anything from Columbus? Go ahead.
I'd like to say if Mr. Began wants to provide some free architectural services to come up with a solution, it would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
If anyone wants to stop out there, I realize you don't go to the sites, but this might be one you guys might like to take a look at because it's hard to see it on the plan. And when you see the situation with the way these doors open out, and you have to kind of go around the door to even get to the steps, and then any other locations, and anything we do is going to cut our exit capacity in half if we use half of the stairway. So it's just, and it was a historic building we were building against. So it's not, if you were there and you saw it in person, I think you might understand the situation we've been in a little better, but and we'll work with the building department.
Understood. While the case is in front of us, we've never done that. I think one time we've done a field trip to an Amazon fulfillment center, but it was already up and constructed and well past the stage of variances that were granted. Okay, anything, Mr. Ghosh, further? Anything, Chief Sanders?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, this hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Susan, is our Morse Road parties present? Looks like it's just would be one. Mr. Todd, is he present?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll proceed as though we're a board of four, assuming Mr. Todd will waive the presence of the fifth member. He might not, in which case we'll deal with that. But let's stay on the record, Tammy. This is case number 20-0111. This deals with the premises located at 2361 Morse Road, located in Columbus. And Columbus's adjudication order is noted on our docket. Let the record reflect it's Dustin Todd, correct? You're here appearing on behalf of the appellant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in what capacity? As owner, as or other representative capacity?
As the architect of the project.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ghosh and Chief Sanders, you're still connected?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Todd, Mr. Ghosh, and Chief Sanders, if you'd stand, raise your right hand. Tammy, would you administer an oath?
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay, we do have a little background noise. Hopefully that won't be prolonged, but Mr. Todd, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. This project is a bit of a unique one that we came across. So just to describe a little background briefly, the site contains two buildings. A one-story building on the east side, which is the original building, and then later on a three-story building was built on the west.
Mr. Todd, I failed to ask you. Are you comfortable going forward in front of a board of four rather than a board of five?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. And same with the chief and Mr. Ghosh, presumably?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Todd. Go ahead.
Yes.
That's all right. So the one-story building is of 2B construction, and the three-story building is of 1B construction. The three-story is a precast building. The previous use of this building, it was a call center for Huntington Bank. The buildings are separated by a 3-hour firewall that extends up 30 inches above the first floor roof as required by code. The issue that we ran into on this project, and the reason we're here today, has to do with a stair that we believe was built after the three-story building was constructed. We believe this because it's not on the drawings that we have for that three-story building. This stair is not rated. Technically, it is not needed for egress from the three-story building because there are two other stairs at the corners of that building which provide proper egress width and proper distance within the three-story building. The issue that this stair causes is it's 3 stories, just like the three-story building above the one-story side. It provides basically a gap between the two buildings in the rating because it is not rated anywhere on any side of the building. So those two categories were listed in the adjudication order for 1023.2, the construction of the stair, and 1024.3, the exit passageway. So what we have proposed to do is to rate the first floor of this stair on the one-story building side up to the bottom of the one-story building, up to the roof deck of the one-story building. Trying to rate the opposite side of that stair on the three-story side is what our hardship is. There's a lot of existing steel within the stair and cross beams. So trying to remove the drywall or add extra drywall would be extremely difficult along this stair. at the wall between the 3-story and that stair is all 6.5-inch precast walls existing. It does have gaps in the precast, as you typically do with the joints, and that's where the rating fails. It doesn't appear that any of those gaps are rated. So what we are proposing to do is to provide a 2-hour rating at the first floor side of this stair, as well as provide a rated exit path at the bottom of this stair, even though code does not specifically require that. And we believe that by adding both of those items, that we're increasing the safety of the building, and that we're providing a third way out of that 3-story building. And one additional item I wanted to add quickly was the existing use of this building was all B use. The new use is going to be a mixed use separated of B and S1. It'll be an auto dealership, which includes a shop within it. So technically it is an increased hazard because of that S1 use, but we are overall decreasing the number of occupants within the building compared to the call center that was in there before. So because of those items and what we're proposing at that stair, we believe we are increasing the safety of this building overall.
Questions of Mr. Todd by members of the board? Hearing none, Mr. Ghosh.
Hold on, Brad's muted there. I think he has a question, Mr. Chair.
It keeps automatically muting me. Anyway, yeah, I have a question. The stairway is only for use for the 3-story building, is that right?
Correct.
But it's actually located in the other building, the 1-story building.
Correct.
Okay, that's all.
Any other questions, Mr. Todd?
Yeah, I question about, I know one of the second item as far as providing a path to the exterior. Have you discussed with the building department what the rating for that enclosure needs to be?
We have discussed that. According to the building code, because of the height of this building, it technically only needs to be 1 hour. But we had discussed providing a 2-hour barrier,
okay,
just to help with the items that we're asking for relief on.
I have another question. So the 1-story building is going to be a car dealership, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but it's all still one building, the 3-story and the 1-story?
They're separated by a firewall, so from
okay,
the code perspective, it's 2 buildings. But yeah, they're both the same use. They're both going to be a mix of B and S1.
Wait, if you don't need that stairway, why don't you close it?
The owners would like to keep it for ease of use and access to the office spaces on the 2nd and 3rd floor. I think that's why it was installed by the previous owners as well.
Okay, because I think you mentioned somewhere that you would take away the exit sign, or it would not be a used exit in an emergency. Is that right?
With the items that we're adding, we believe that it could be.
Okay. Okay, so it still would be an emergency exit.
Yes, if the board and the building department were accepting of what we're adding to it, that it could be used as a safe exit. But I think the reason I added that language in there was to essentially say that it doesn't have to be considered an egress path because of the other 2 stairs that we have.
Yeah, but if people know it's there, they're probably going to use it. That's
yes, exactly, and that's why in our discussions with Mr. Ghosh, we added that exit path out on the bottom, so that people weren't egressing into the other building.
A quick question about is any of the 2 buildings sprinklered at all?
They're both fully sprinklered.
Okay, and I assuming then if that's the case that there are standpipes in the other two stairwells?
I believe so.
But not in this one?
I would have to confirm, but I don't believe there is one in this stair.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh?
Nope.
Yes, Mr. Chair, overall, Mr. Todd has worked with us and we're satisfied with what he's proposing. The 2-hour enclosure at the bottom of the steps, the 2-hour exit passageway leading people directly to the outside. And because the precast panels do not have the fire caulk in between, that he'd provide a water curtain along those two walls, along that wall on the taller building side. With those three concessions that he's offering, we are in support of this appeal.
In Columbus Fire?
Columbus Fire is in support of the appeal also, based on the facts at hand.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Mr. Ghosh to talk about the location of the water curtain again, just so that I understand it correctly enough to put it in as a condition?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Began, sure. It will be on the inside wall. It would be on the, the precast wall, 3-story precast wall that's.
Yep.
It will be on the inside face of that because they don't have, that wall technically doesn't have any rating because they don't have fire caulk between the panels.
I hear you.
Okay, and Mr. Todd, that's correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. Before we go off record, Neil, your comfort level?
I'm fine with it with the condition.
Brad, your comfort level?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right, if the parties would just stand by for a second, we'll let Paul work something up and we'll see how that goes. Tammy, off the record.
I'm back, Carl.
Okay. Let's go back on the record for just a second, Tammy. The parties we're in a deliberation stage and the parties agreed to proceed in your absence, so you need not deliberate on this.
Okay.
Okay. We're back on. In your absence, you need not deliberate.
Mike Foltz here, attorney for Westerville.
Okay, thank you. If you go ahead and mute, we're not to that hearing yet, though, but thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm going to try to throw some conditions up on the screen for everybody to review.
Okay, let's go back on the record, please, Tammy.
Okay, I have put some proposed conditions up on the screen. It is going to take a moment. We do have a little bit of delay so that Mr. Ghosh can take a look at them. Once those are up, I will go ahead and read them into the record. This variance is conditioned on the following. Number one, a 3-hour fire rated assembly shall be added to the stair extending from the floor slab up to the roof deck of the 1-story building. Number two, an egress path shall be provided from the bottom of the stair to the exterior of the building enclosed by a 2-hour fire rated assembly. Number three, automatic deluge sprinkler heads, parent water curtain and parent shall be provided on the interior face of the 3-story building adjacent to the stair to the satisfaction of the building and fire officials. Number four, all penetrations and opening protectives shall be designed and installed in accordance with Chapter 7 of the Ohio Building Code, as well as being maintained in accordance with the Ohio Fire Code. And number five, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, square footage, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein.
Okay, Mr. Todd, any questions? And otherwise, any objections?
No questions or objections.
Thank you. Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be satisfied with a 2-hour fire rated assembly at the bottom of that stair. But
Okay.
if the board desires 3 hours, we'll be fine with that too. Item one.
I am okay, Mr. Chair, with changing it to a 2-hour. That would be what would be normally required for a stair. I was just reading from the appellant's application as far as what that item was. So I would modify condition number one to read a 2-hour fire rated assembly shall be added to the stair extending from the floor slab up to the roof deck of the 1-story building.
Okay, Neil and Brad, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm assuming, Mr. Todd, you're okay with that, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and Chief, are you okay with those conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0111. The appellant is Performance Drive Direct and for each properties LLC at the location of 2361 Morse Road, Columbus, Ohio 43229. The appellee is Amit Ghosh, building official for the City of Columbus Building Department, and adjudication order number A/O 2020-013. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read in the record and noting the no objection of the building and fire officials.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Todd, the variance is granted on those 5 conditions. Anything further to come in front of the board on behalf of the appellant?
Not today. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything on behalf of either city building or city fire?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Nothing from fire, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we stand adjourned on this hearing. Let's just take a minute break. Anybody wants to get a cup of coffee, whatever. It's right 10 o'clock now, and the next case was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and we'll be back with those parties assuming we have those, Susan. And I think we have most of the parties. You weren't sure. Is Mr. Ferris on the phone or present?
Mr. Ferris does not plan to attend.
Okay, so we have Mr. Freeman, we have Mr. Sapp and Nizan. So we'll be ready to proceed in just a minute. Let's go off the webcam.
Brad, I muted you, just so you're aware. I don't know what the background is, noise coming through your computer, but I've had to mute you a number of times. I apologize.
Oh, sorry about that.
So just so you know, if I'll mute anybody that it shows background noise coming through.
I have background noise.
Yeah, for some reason that's unusual with you. So,
Okay. Sorry about that.
yeah,
Well, feel free to mute me.
I just want to let you know. Thanks.
Well, I just, every time I go to talk, I didn't realize I was muted because the mute
know.
bar doesn't always come up.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I do it as needed.
Okay. No problem. Here, unmute me.
Okay, it looks like we've got everyone but Mr. Began. We'll wait a couple minutes. complaints attached.
Is everybody back, Mr. Chair?
Yes, was that Paul? Yes, we are, we're ready to go. Okay, thank you for your indulgence. We're going to call a case that was set for 10 o'clock on our docket, and noting for the record, it's 10:06. Tammy, we're on, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's case number 20-0078, and it deals with the parking structure located at 911 St. John Street in Columbus. And it's Columbus's building authority's adjudication order is noted on our docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties, first beginning with the representatives for the appellant. There are two, as I understand here today. Mr. Ferris will not be participating, although he was on our attendee list. And then we have Mr. Ghosh, and we have Chief Sanders here on behalf of Columbus Fire. But go ahead, introduce yourself on behalf of the appellants, please.
Matthew.
Francis Sapienza.
All right, let's start with Mr. Crummy.
Matthew Crummy with Perkins and Will Architects. We're the architects for the project.
Thank you.
Francis Sapienza with the representing the owner developer of the project.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Ghosh?
Ahmed Ghosh, GHOS8, City of Columbus.
And Chief Sanders?
Battalion Chief Scott Sanders, Columbus Ohio Division of Fire, Assistant Fire Marshal.
Okay, and for the if you were on the call or the hearing preceding, we were a board of 4. We have our fire official member back, so we're a fully populated board at this point in time. If each of you'd stand, raise your right hand. Tammy, would you administer?
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, Mr. Sapienza or Mr. Crummy, you have the floor.
I'll share my screen here. I'll recap briefly what we presented before. You'll remember that we were continued when we first presented. The project is in Franklinton and is comprised of, oh dear, I seem to be having a technical issue with advancing my slides.
Paul might be of assistance.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Crummy, sometimes you got to close some of the other windows that you have open. For whatever reason, sharing over this Microsoft Teams seems to make things flutter a bit.
Yeah, I had a couple, okay, hold on. I've closed, okay, I seem to be able to do it. I will try sharing my desktop again here.
Okay.
Whoops, hold on. So this is what was presented in our prior discussion. This slide gives context to where the project's located. There's 2 phases to our project, and they're divided by a property line. And the prescriptive requirements of the code would dictate a 2-hour firewall located on our property line. Our request is to eliminate that requirement, allowing a single communicating garage that is located below this office building. And it's our sincere belief that this creates a safer condition. Were we required to create this firewall, the resulting garage on the phase 1 property would no longer be a open garage. It would require mechanical ventilation, and it would also limit the awareness between the 2 properties. There are currently shared use agreements in place between the 2 properties, and there's a single tenant that will occupy both properties on day 1 of the second property coming online. when we talked about this before. I don't know if I need to recap that conversation fully, but we left the conversation with a commitment to fully sprinkler the 2 open garages. And since our call last time, the garage at phase 1 has been designed to adapt for sprinklers, and sprinkler installation has begun and is largely complete on the phase 1 garage property. And we also have contract documents to sprinkler the garage on the phase 2 property. That was one of the documents I had open, but it seems to be the one that's crashing my Adobe. So it's entered into the record. Susan had a copy and it's attached to the case file. I won't pull it up here because it seemed to be causing some technical problems. So with that, I will see if there are any questions.
Sure. Any questions of Mr. Crummy?
Yeah, just to refresh my memory, and I'm sure that we asked this question last time. I mean, why does this have to be 2 separate parcels? I mean, we're talking about a line that doesn't necessarily have to be there unless we have a reason for it. So.
Sure, and I can answer that. As we stated the last time, we started this project as a phase 1 project with a projection for a phase 2 that was planned to be a year, 2 years, 3 years later, if at all, when we first started. After the first year of construction of phase 1, the tenant accelerated based on their growth the decision to move forward with phase 2. And so we had 1 lease in place on phase 1, 1 loan in place that was already set in phase 1. And so we had to go out, we had to put together the phase 2 project and secure a second loan for phase 2. So there's 2 independent loans, there's 2 independent leases. Once the lease terms are up, the tenant has no obligation to lease any of the buildings. They could lease one of the buildings. So it acts as 2 independent buildings. They're designed as 2 independent buildings. If the tenant no longer needs one of them in the future, that building could be set up for another use or sold, or that's the way this deal was structured.
Right, and I do recall that having been asked, and I do recall you answering that question.
Yes. And another component is at the end of the lease term or during the lease term, our tenant has the right to buy both buildings or just one of the buildings. They can choose to continue not to be a lessee, and they could actually acquire the property. But they have a right to only require one of the buildings. So that's why this deal is structured as 2 independent properties, 2 independent buildings.
Thank you.
Is that Francis that was talking?
Yes,
yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions of Mr. Crummy or Mr. Sapienza? Okay, Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They did give us enough information. Our question at the last hearing was that can the phase 2 parking garage, which is 3 levels, be sprinklered? And they've given us some preliminary information to give us some level of comfort that yes, with multiple risers, it can be sprinklered. So we're satisfied. We speak in support of this appeal.
Okay, Chief Sanders.
Just like Mr. Ghosh, Columbus Fire is in support of the appeal.
Okay, members of the board, any questions of either Chief Sanders or Mr. Ghosh?
Yes, Mr. Ghosh, I'm wondering, other than review and approval of the shared use and agreements and deed restrictions by your team. Are there any other conditions that you think are needed for this variance?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Began, that's a very good question, sir. After hearing Mr. Sapienza talk about this, if the use of either of those buildings changes in the future, a different tenant uses it in a different manner, then obviously we'll need a full review. As long as they remain office use, the appeal that you grant will stand.
So our
I don't know how to word that.
So our standard use condition?
Yes.
That work?
Yeah, and again, the issue would not be a change of use. It would just basically be change of tenants. These buildings are still designed as commercial office space, and in the future, it would just be a change of tenancy, not a change of use. It would remain as commercial office space.
Oh, you'd be surprised how many different buildings we've seen turn into all kinds of different uses down the road.
Well, I mean, but at that point in time, right?
Well, yeah.
The city does not lose jurisdiction, and they could weigh in at that time.
Sure. So if we proposed a change of use, we would go back to the city to work with them to attempt a change of use.
Okay, gentlemen of the board, thoughts? If no other questions of any of the parties, what are your thoughts and comfort level with moving forward?
Mr. Chair, this is Neil. I'm in favor of it, but I would like to disclose that the S.A. Carmiel Company is a signatory contractor with my local union, although the geographical area in question is not part of my jurisdiction.
Okay, I don't think that disclosure compromises you in the least, but I'll defer to Mr. Sapienza and/or Mr. Crummy, Mr. Ghosh, or Chief Sanders. Any concern if Mr. Gehring remains on and deliberates?
I don't have any concerns.
I have no concerns.
Had he said he
no
wasn't
concerns,
in favor,
Mr. Chair.
had he said he wasn't in favor of the variance before he made that disclosure, that might have changed. I understand. Okay. Brad, what's your comfort level?
I'm comfortable with it. I think they're providing a sprinkler system like the city required, so I'm comfortable with it.
Chip?
I'm comfortable with it. I think frankly, it's safer in this design than with a firewall or barrier, the 2-hour barrier between the two properties.
Okay. And Paul?
Yeah, I'm with Mr. Goshen, Chief, behind it. We've gone through a few times and have continued to make sure that the Columbus Building and Fire Department are satisfactory. And again, I've said it many times before, but all of us leave here and down the road, the fire chief is the one that has to deal with what we decide here. So his support is paramount. So.
Okay, are you just going to propose the standard use condition?
I have one too about the deed restrictions as well, okay. Too.
All right.
I think it's important that the city of Columbus, I would assume it's the city attorney has a chance to review and give approval to the shared use and deed restrictions as far as it pertains to maintenance of the sprinkler systems and what may happen if one building sells and the other one, you know, all those things that are normally figured out by the attorneys. That is probably important to the certificate of occupancy and needs to be reviewed by the city. So that I will have a condition pertaining to that.
Okay, let's just go off the record for just a second.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I can,
Okay, on record, Tammy.
okay, I have put some conditions up on the screen. I'm going to wait just a moment till they come through on a little bit of a delay so that those joining by phone have a chance to take a look at them. Okay. Oops, I lost my screen now. Hold on a second.
We still see it.
I know you do. I had to make sure I have my screen so that I could read it. This variance is conditioned upon the following. Number one, an executed copy of the required shared use agreement and deed restriction requirements shall be submitted to the building official for review and approval, and then filed with the Franklin County Recorder. An executed copy shall also be provided to the building official and the Ohio Board of Building Appeals. Number two, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, project area, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents for both buildings and the garage, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein. And number three, the conditions of the variance shall apply to both parcels sharing the garage and listed on the certificate of occupancy for each.
Okay, I'll begin with Mr. Crummy and or Mr. Sapienza. Any questions or need for clarification or any concerns with those proposed conditions?
None from me.
None from me as well.
Okay, very good. Mr. Ghosh?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Began, should it say that both garages will be sprinklered even though they're not required to be?
I could definitely add that as a condition for sure.
Mr. Crummy, Mr. Sapienza, any issues with that?
No, not at all. We're actively installing those sprinkler systems now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Began.
Before we do that real quick, Chief, your thoughts?
Columbus Fire is in full support. We've worked hard along with Mr. Ghosh and the parties that we're satisfied.
Okay.
I am going to need a moment to craft up a.
That's fine. Understood. Off record.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go back on the record, Tammy.
Hold on 1 second. I just lost it here. What I wanted to do is I forgot to add a paragraph about the maintenance. Hold on.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just go off the record till you're ready. Back on? Okay, Tammy, back on.
Apologize for the delay there. All right, now I just need to get this up on the
Right.
screen. It is acting very finicky today. All right, there we go. As I've read three conditions, what I'm going to do is add a new condition 2, which reads, an automatic sprinkler system shall be installed throughout the garage per OBC 903 and NFPA Chapter 13, and to the satisfaction of the building and fire officials. The automatic sprinkler system shall be considered a required system and listed on the certificate of occupancy for both buildings, and shall be maintained utilizing the Ohio Fire Code and adopted NFPA standards. then I would move what was previously condition 2 and 3 to be condition 3 and 4.
Right, okay, so the added condition is now condition 2.
Correct.
Any objection from any of the parties?
No objection here.
Okay, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair. For Board of Building Appeals, case number 20-0078, the appellant is Francis A. Sapienza Jr. For C.H. John Street Phase 2 LLC, and for the premises parking structure at 9 John Street, Columbus, Ohio. The appellee is Amit Ghosh, building official for the City of Columbus Building Department, and adjudication order number A/O 2020-007. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read into the record and noting the no objection of the building and fire officials.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The variance is granted unanimously by this board on those conditions. Anything further to come from the appellant?
No, thank you very much for your time
Any-
and your consideration on this.
Thank you.
And
Anything?
Mr. Chair, if just a little direction, I mean, it is spelled out in the first condition, but the onus is on the appellant to provide the shared use and deed restriction documents to the building department for their review and approval. Mr. Ghosh is able to hold the certificate of occupancy until his team has had a chance to review and approve those documents. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. Hey, yes, you did get a variance for this item, but there is still some more work for you to do.
Yes, we understand that, and we provided that information already, and we can go back through it with the building department.
Okay, great. Anything further from city building or city fire?
No,
Hearing
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Thanks to the board.
Thank you. Okay, we stand adjourned on this hearing. We have one hearing to get on our docket and some other matters on our agenda, but let's just take a 2-minute recess and we'll get started off the record.
Chairman Sanders, Susan. We'll
Yeah,
need to
so-
have, we'll need to have the ones that are here by phone, hit star 6 to unmute.
Okay, all right. Waiting, looks like on Paul, and then we'll.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, all right. Let's go on the record if we could. The case that we're going to call is a Westerville fire case. It's styled as a Goldman hearing, and I'll get into that in a second, but it's the case number is 20-0003, and it deals with the Frisian Empire Wedding and Event Center located in Westerville. I'm not sure that I think we had Chip Welch, our fire official, is aware of this because he's also a lawyer, and we had a conversation actually on record this morning. I think maybe it was on record, but on the virtual hearing, because Susan had gotten some correspondence from the property owner and representatives counsel, Tom Rosenberg, I'm sorry, and then I had gotten also an email from Tom this morning. So let's chat about this. But first of all, let's find out. So I understood we had counsel for the city of Westerville, or Westerville Fire had called in. Is that correct, or appeared?
Correct. Westerville Fire's here, Chief Miller and Chief Fire Marshal David Williams.
And I believe Mr. Foltz, our attorney's online too.
Okay.
I haven't.
I heard him patch in earlier. Mr. Foltz, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
And also,
and all right, and then Tom Rosenberg, are you here? And again, I won't. Maybe then that's. All right. Are you? How are you?
Yes.
How are
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you by phone?
Yes.
Okay, so there may be some delays on this. So here's the situation, and I don't know where we want to go with this, but we have historically operated on a Court of Appeals case going back to 1996 that dealt with a medical board licensing matter where I guess it was a cosmetic therapist was then, or maybe still under the jurisdiction of the medical board, had his license revoked by the medical board. He had failed to, and I'll go to the case, but he had failed to request a hearing, apparently on a show cause or notice of intended revocation. And so what happened was the medical board met and simply revoked his license. It went to the trial court under a 119 review, and the trial court affirmed the medical board's determination under 119.12, which isn't surprising, since if there's any reliable or substantial or probative evidence to support an agency's order, it generally does so. But in this case, the 10th District reversed the trial court, saying that there was no meaningful hearing that ever occurred, and remanded it back to the trial court to, in effect, remand it back to the medical board to adjourn a new hearing where there would be a, quote, meaningful hearing. But the interesting part of this case, now that I've read it again this morning, is that the 10th District said that still, when it was remanded back to the medical board for a new hearing, the Mr. Goldman, the licensee who had his license revoked, had waived his right to proceed. And so as a result of that, it predates, I think I got on the board in 2013 or 14 or something like that, but this has been around for a long time. We have operated, presumably on the advice of board counsel, the attorney general, on that standard, which is that in a Goldman case, when it was before us, when a property owner, responsible party, perhaps cited by the fire department, or in this case, there's an adjudication order by the fire department, doesn't timely appeal, it goes forward essentially in absentia. The the responsible party can participate in the hearing by listening, but can't cross-examine witnesses and can't do anything else. And I read a Goldman case preamble, which says exactly that, and I'll just read it really quickly, and then but I do think that we need to open this up for some discussion. I want to hear from Westerville Council, and I want to hear from Mr. Rosenberg, and then we'll decide. But in an ordinary world, I would read this into the record. Before we proceed, and for the benefit of those in attendance today, the case before us is what is called a Goldman case. And a Goldman case is an evidentiary review in the citation process being used by the appellee to attempt to remedy an alleged violation of the code sections that were cited. The responsible persons in this case had the opportunity under Ohio law and the administrative code to file a timely appeal before this board. As a result of not filing an appeal, the responsible persons have waived their due process rights in this proceeding. This is a public meeting. Any person or persons representing the party listed as the responsible party, as well as any citizen, is welcome to listen from the audience to the testimony. Of course, in this case, it'd be virtual. The Board of Building Appeals is not legally required, nor will it permit the responsible persons the opportunity to make an opening statement, to present evidence, to cross-examine witnesses, or challenge their evidence, or to make a closing statement. So that would be the way we would proceed. And I think as chair here, I just got to make sure that that I do hear, at least from Mr. Rosenberg and from Westerville Council, that maybe, and my understanding is there may be some dealings between the parties that are happening as we speak in terms of plan submissions. But I'll first hear from Mr. Rosenberg.
All right, thank you.
Sir, real quick, I just want to clarify, this is Chief Miller with Westerville Division of Fire. We have a contract with Blendon Township, so the property in question is actually in Blendon Township. Okay. So Blendon Township's Administrator Brian Rhodes, I believe, is on the call, as is, I believe, their legal counsel. So that will be, he'll be representing the township.
Okay. Understood then. All right, let's hold there on there for a second, Tom. Let's do this. Tom, why don't you enter your formal appearance?
Yep, Thomas Rosenberg from Russell and Andrus on behalf of Friesen Empire Wedding and Event Center. Also on the line is Delina Siamaco of Friesen Empire Wedding and Event Center, and Kyle Bickle from MS Consultants, the architect that we have on this project.
Okay,
and I will address.
Well, hold on real quick. I want to get, so who's counsel for the township, and would you enter your appearance? No one appearing on behalf of the township?
Yeah, they're having some trouble getting in.
Okay, Mr. Foltz, enter your appearance if you would.
Thank you, sir. Mike Foltz, 00.